The crown prince fell in love with the mute girl who saved him and insisted on breaking off our engagement. I kindly advised him, "The mute girl is alone and powerless. Why not take her as a concubine first?" Feeling insulted, the mute girl took her own life in shame and anger. 10 years later, the first thing the crown prince did after securing the throne was to depose me as empress and exterminate my entire clan. This is what you owe Ruoruo. When I woke up again, it was during my 16th birthday banquet. The person seated above asked me what my wish was. May the crown prince and Miss Liu grow old together in harmony, united in heart forever. I bowed reverently. Your Majesty, please bestow marriage upon them. I died on a snowy day. It could have been delayed until the spring of next year. But Chu Heng couldn't wait. The dagger pierced my chest inch by inch, and blood flowed all over the bed. He still felt unsatisfied. He twisted the handle, letting the cold dagger churn through my flesh. I was in so much pain I could barely breathe, but I still couldn't help asking, why? I don't understand. We had known each other since childhood, close friends from our earliest years. For over a decade, my father and brothers had been loyal to the country and had supported him wholeheartedly. Before he consolidated imperial power, he had already surrendered his military authority and voluntarily took the blame, yet he still found a baseless charge to condemn my Xie clan to death. Why, Chu Heng? I gripped his wrist tightly. Chu Heng's face was paler than the vast snow outside. Though he was the one who dealt the fatal blow, his expression made it seem as if I had betrayed him. This is what you owe Ruoruo. He gritted his teeth. Ruoruo, Liu Ruo. The memory was so distant that it took me some effort to recall that name and the face behind that name, delicate and frail like a willow in the wind. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. 10 years. It turns out that over these 10 years, Chu Heng never forgot her. It turns out he blamed her death on me, on the entire Xie family. Chu Heng, you really are, idiot. Before the last 2 words could be spoken, Chu Heng had already drawn his dagger. The red blood splattered, leaving a trace beneath the tongue. It was fishy and sweet. It was just like the bowl of bloodbird's nest my mother had stewed for me that year. Her eyes red from staying up all night too. Miss, is your heart aching again? The heavy snow like clouds has vanished. The piercing chill has disappeared. Spring is in full bloom, with people bustling about. My 16th birthday celebration. Indeed, it seems heaven has opened its eyes. With one blink and another, I actually didn't die. Not only did I not die, but I also returned to the age of 16 this year. My brother won a great victory in battle, and my father made significant contributions in managing flood control this year. I had not yet married Chu Heng. No wonder your heart aches. A mocking laugh came from behind. Yesterday, the crown prince knelt outside the hall of diligent governance all night, demanding to annul the marriage arrangement with the minister's household. Hongyang turned to leave, but I stopped her. It wasn't just about annulling the engagement with me that year. Chu Heng encountered danger while suppressing bandits, fell off a cliff, and was rescued by a lone woman. The orphan girl was beautiful and gentle in nature. To save him, she tasted hundreds of herbs, not only damaging her health but also losing her sweet, nightingale-like voice to poisoning. Chu Heng was deeply moved and brought her back to the palace. Counting yesterday, she had already knelt in the hall of diligent governance for 3 days and nights. He wanted to marry her as his crown princess. Miss, don't listen to the idle gossip outside. You and the crown prince have had a bond since childhood, and his highness has always been. I looked at Hongyang and shook my head at her. Hongyan's words came to an abrupt halt. Of course, I knew what she was about to say. 3 days ago, I woke up in the minister's mansion. 3 days were enough for me to sort out my past and present lives. Miss, Hongyang suddenly brightened her eyes and whispered, His Highness the Crown Prince is coming. 3. I looked up and saw Chu Heng, dressed in his usual crown prince attire, walking toward me surrounded by a crowd. The murmurs behind me immediately fell silent. Chu Heng and I grew up together. Our marriage was arranged even before we were born. Since childhood, whenever anyone spoke ill of me, he was the first to stand up for me. He made a mistake and was punished, and I was the first to plead for him. Before this, no one would have doubted that I was Chu Heng's beloved, the only candidate for the crown princess. But today, on my 16th birthday, he brought another woman, Liu Ruo, pale and slender, nestled beside him like a startled bird. Chu Heng had knelt all night, showing no sign of fatigue. Instead, a faint smile played on his lips as he whispered something intimately into her ear. She looked at me, her expression instantly turning panicked and flustered, taking several hurried steps forward. Then, with a thud, she knelt down before me, for indeed, it's exactly the same as in my previous life. Even the tear hanging on her eyelashes, about to fall but not yet, is exactly the same in my past life. I was deceived by her pitiful appearance and genuinely planned for her and Chu Heng. I come from the Xie family, and my future husband is the crown prince. I never expected one life, one love. Her appearance made my heart ache, yet I did not lose my dignified composure when Chu Heng wanted to break off the engagement. I did not cry or make a scene. Instead, considering our years of affection, I sincerely advised him, Miss Liu has no one to rely on in the capital, and she also has her shortcomings. Although she saved you, even if she were to kneel until her knees break, His Majesty would never allow her to take the position of the principal wife. On the contrary, it would only bring disaster upon her. Your Highness, why not settle for the second best and bring her into the Eastern Palace first? In the future, I spoke in veiled terms, in the future, won't it still be up to your Highness to decide? With just these few words, I averted disaster for her but brought a world of trouble upon myself. 5. Bang, bang, bang. In my previous life, whenever I saw Liu Ruo kneel, I would rush over to help her up. Without hesitation this time, I just watched coldly as she, without a moment's hesitation, began kowtowing to me. Thud after thud, the sound echoed loudly. Hong Yang tugged at my sleeve. There are many guests today, and they are all looking this way. I brush her hand away. What's the hurry, Ruoruo? Chu Heng's expression has already turned rather unpleasant. In just a short while, Liu Ruo's forehead was already bruised from the kowtowing, paired with her teary eyes. It was truly a pitiful sight. She glanced back at Chu Heng, then at me, bit her lip, and continued to kowtow. I leisurely picked up my teacup. Suddenly, I'm a bit curious, just how far can she pretend? 6. That's right, Liu Ruo is pretending. Her muteness is an act, her pitiful demeanor is an act, and even her shameful suicide in her past life was an act. In a quiet, deserted corner of Chang'an Street, I heard her voice, clear as a nightingale's song, with my own ears sobbing and pleading with a masked man. Master, I am but a lonely girl. If I don't resort to some desperate measures, how will His Highness ever take me seriously? Master, I beg you, give me another dose of the fake death medicine. Master, Ruoer truly admires the crown prince. I know my status, even being his concubine would be a reach for me, but your Highness promised me the position of principal wife back then. I must make some moves on this matter to make your Highness feel guilty toward me. Master, please grant Ruoer this wish. Just by faking death once, His Highness will remember his debt to me for the rest of his life. How well she can pretend. He deceived Chu Heng, he deceived me, he deceived all the dignitaries and nobles in Shangjing City. I once asked Chu Heng why he was so infatuated with Liu Ruo. From the moment I was born, I was the crown prince. Everyone fawned over me and flattered me. They respect me, love me, all because of my status as the crown prince. Even you, Shu Yin, if I were not the crown prince, would you still love me? That question left me speechless at the time. If he were not the crown prince, I would not have been betrothed to him, nor would we have grown up together. How could there be any talk of love? Only Ruoruo. She was willing to give her life for me without even knowing my identity. Shu Yin, such pure love, how could I resist? I was almost swayed by his words. As a daughter of a noble family, I have always acted with careful consideration. Thinking 3 steps ahead, I have to consider my parents and my family. So I certainly wouldn't easily give my life for someone. We have all overlooked another possibility. Even if Chu Heng fell off a cliff, his clothing alone would reveal his noble status. Whether he is a nobleman, a prince, or the crown prince, from the very beginning, Liu Ruo had made up her mind to climb onto his high branch. 7. Enough, Chu Heng shouted angrily. Silence fell all around. Liu Ruo trembled all over, shivering as she looked up, her beautiful eyes gazing at me with anticipation. The meaning was quite clear. She had ruined my marriage, making me the laughingstock of the capital, and she felt deeply guilty. If I didn't speak, she would never stop. Very well, then keep going. I raised my eyebrows slightly, lowered my gaze, and took a sip of tea. Liu Ruo gritted her teeth, bent down, and was about to kowtow again. Chu Heng suddenly took 2 steps forward. Slap, he swept the teacup from my hand with a single motion. Xie Shuyin, don't go too far. 8. Xie Shuyin, is this the dignity befitting the eldest daughter of the Xie family? Chu Heng glared coldly, startling all the servants around into kneeling on the ground. He turned and pulled Liu Ruo up, tenderly stroking her forehead. Xie Shuyin, apologize now, and I will act as if nothing ever happened. I almost laughed out loud. I blame myself for being too naive back then. After catching Liu Ruo, I wrote a letter to Chu Heng that very night, telling him everything I had seen and heard, have him keep an eye on Liu Ruo. The next day, Liu Ruo was dead, truly dead. Rumors in the streets say she refused to become a concubine and, in shame and anger, took her own life. Chu Heng wrote back to me, thanks to your reminder, those who deceive me deserve death. After that, the matter was dropped for so many years. I thought he had turned the tables and killed Liu Ruo. After all, he has always hated being deceived the most until the moment before death, so the deceiver of the crown prince he spoke of was me. 9. Xie Shuyin, have you lost your tongue? Ruoruo has done nothing wrong. It is I who wish to call off the engagement, apologize to her, and I will not hold you accountable for the injury on her forehead. I looked at Chu Heng and couldn't help but curl the corner of my lips. I must have been blind to have always thought he was wise and shrewd. Hongyang, is His Majesty in the front hall? I turned to look at the maid beside me. Hongyang nodded blankly. I lifted my skirt and walked forward. Chu Heng followed closely behind. What do you want to do? This time, His Majesty is traveling incognito and has not summoned any female attendants. Of course I knew. A birthday banquet for a minister's daughter like me is hardly enough to warrant the emperor lowering his dignity to personally visit the residence. But why is your majesty here? Because both of my elder brothers are at the frontier, and news of their victories keeps coming. Because my father has just managed to control the floods, and the people are full of praise. Because for 100 years, the Xie family has produced most of the key officials in the court, and the crown prince knelt for 3 days and nights, wanting to break off the engagement with me. The emperor feared disappointing the hearts of my father and brother, until the palace attendant announced. Chu Heng was still closely following behind me. Shuyin, do not take advantage of your birthday to ask His Majesty for things that do not belong to you. I have already promised Ruoruo the position of my principal wife, and I will not go back on my word. If you insist on marrying me, then you can only be a concubine. I glanced back at Chu Heng as he said, he was born a crown prince. His life has been too smooth. He never realized what the position of crown princess meant to him. Perhaps my gaze was too cold, as Chu Heng was momentarily stunned. Just then, the emperor spoke from his seat. Shuyin, what urgent matter brings you to see me? The hall was filled with guests. I knelt down and said, Your Majesty, today is my birthday. May I be so bold as to ask for a wish? His Highness the Crown Prince and Miss Liu share a deep bond forged through hardship, and I truly envy them. I fear I might disrupt their vow to grow old together and remain united in heart forever. Your Majesty, please annul the marriage contract between your humble servant's daughter and the Crown Prince. Grant them a marriage instead. I knelt reverently on the ground. The room fell into a dead silence, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 10 before evening fell. The news had spread throughout Shangjing City. The marriage between the Crown Prince and the Xie family was likely to be called off. The Crown Prince's request to marry his savior had already caused quite a stir today. The eldest daughter of the Xie family, who had always been a model of noble conduct, actually requested the emperor to annul the engagement in front of all the officials at her own birthday banquet. It is said that His Highness the Crown Prince's expression at that moment was quite spectacular. His Majesty even directly denounced him as a rebellious son and smashed a teacup at him. Nonsense. I knelt on the ground and also did not escape a teacup being thrown at me. Who allowed you to be so audacious? My father's beard was practically bristling with rage. Call off the engagement. Her marriage is a matter of parental decree and matchmaker's word. Is it something a woman like you should meddle in? You even dare to act recklessly before His Majesty. I stood with my back straight, not even blinking. The marriage was granted by the late emperor. Do you think you can just call it off as you please? You go to the palace honestly and plead guilty, saying it was a momentary impulse. Speaking without restraint. I won't go, I said decisively. Won't go. What do you plan to do if you don't go? Break off the engagement. Breaking off the engagement. Breaking off the engagement. After breaking it off, Do you think anyone in this capital city would dare to marry you? I curled my lips. That's not necessarily true. You, my father pointed at me. I think you've been possessed by evil spirits. He flung his sleeve and left. 11 I truly must be possessed if not for the experiences of my past life. I could never have done these things since childhood. I was disciplined to follow the rules, not to mention taking the initiative to break off an engagement. In the past, I would never have appeared in front of so many male guests in the main hall, but following the rules does not lead to a good outcome. For a century, the Xie family knew when to advance and when to retreat. When the court needed them, they charged forward with courage. When the court was stable, they withdrew from the limelight. Absolute loyalty earned them the absolute trust of successive monarchs. My father, my brothers, and uncles have always adhered to the ancestral teachings, so in the previous life, as soon as Chu Heng showed any indication, they did not hesitate. Some handed over their power, others resigned from their positions, but they were caught off guard by Chu Heng. It has been proven that absolute loyalty to a fool is called blind loyalty. Miss, what did the Crown Prince say? Hong Yang couldn't read while applying the medicine to my knees. She leaned in, eagerly looking at the letter in my hand. In the past, Chu Heng and I often exchanged letters, pouring out endless heartfelt words. This time, there were only 4 large characters. Enough is enough. I tugged at the corner of my lips and turned to the candlelight. Miss, Hong Yang grew anxious. Miss, if His Highness apologizes, just give in a little. I interrupted her. Aside from the letter, was anything else delivered to me today? Hong Yang was taken aback. Yes, there is. She handed over a piece of white jade from the dressing case, her eyes suddenly lighting up. Today is the young lady's birthday. Could this also be from the Crown Prince? My eyes also lit up, and I stood up, grabbing my cloak. Miss, what has been the matter with you these past few days? Are you going out so late? Wait for me. Hong Yang, you stay here. Closing the door, turning around, and stepping forward. The me of these past few days is certainly no longer the me of the days before. A few days ago, the rule-abiding Xie Shuyan had already died. What remained was only the rebellious Xie Shuyan. 12 The man before her was thin and pale, yet, the mole at the corner of his eye was a bewitching shade of red. It was quite different. From what I remembered, I was sizing him up, and he was sizing me up as well. His dark eyes were faint, seemingly indifferent. Miss Xie truly lives up to her reputation, graceful and dignified in appearance. Her voice is like pearls falling. I smiled at him. The first prince truly lives up to his reputation. With the quality of pine and cypress, the corners of his lips lifted slightly, and he smiled very faintly as well. Both were speaking formalities, each fully aware of the other's true intentions. The fruits Miss Xie sent over the day before yesterday, he said, pushing the fruit bowl in front of him. They're ripe. I unfolded the white jade in my hand. The great prince's beautiful jade has been received. I took a melon from the basin. He reached out for the jade. I closed my palm. His hand paused, and I smiled at him. 13 His name is Chu Yu, the eldest prince of His Majesty, the elder brother of Chu Heng. My father was right. The marriage contract between me and Chu Heng was bestowed by the late emperor, and it cannot be broken so easily. But I also know all too well that this marriage must be called off on the first day after my rebirth. I tossed and turned, searching my memories for this person. High status, good position, and most importantly, he died young. Strictly speaking, he was the emperor's legitimate eldest son, and the crown prince position should have been his. My marriage contract should have been his, but his birth mother was frail and passed away shortly after giving birth to him. He was also frequently ill, and before he even turned 1, the royal astrologer declared that this child would not live past 18. Thus, the position of crown prince was never meant for him. In his previous life, he had lived past 18, but only managed to survive for 6 more years. Yet he clearly had ambitions. He never married and had no children. At the time of his death, the wealth in his mansion exceeded half of the national treasury. I can't imagine what it would have been like if he had lived a few more years or been in good health. What does Miss Xie mean by this? Chu Yu's dark eyes looked at me. Xie Shuyan despises fools the most. I raised an eyebrow at him. Before we form an alliance, let me see what you're capable of. Chu Yu smiled. This time it was a genuine smile, lending a touch of radiance to his pale face. He slowly raised his cup and took a sip of tea. 14 Engaging in private dealings would have been considered a grave transgression for The former Xie Shuyan, but I need an ally. Moreover, he is a wise ally. 15 The capital city is very calm. The rumors circulated for a few days and then collapsed on their own. How could the marriage between the Eastern Palace and the Xie family possibly fall through? The eldest daughter of the Xie family is destined to become the empress if the crown prince does not marry her. Who dares to? Chu Heng was very happy. The emperor never looked pleased to see him, so he simply took Liu Ruo on a spring hunt. He is not in the capital, so naturally he would not notice the frequent transactions between merchant houses in just one short month, or, even if he were in the capital, he would not pay it any mind. The Eastern Palace does not lack silver. Even if it did, the Xie family would fill the gap for him. He also didn't notice the silent personnel changes in the Eastern Palace. After all, they were just maids and nannies, insignificant. Is that all? The correspondence between me and Chu Heng turned into exchanges between me and Chu Yu. It's just that the sickly eldest prince didn't say much. He did not reply to this letter. Not 2 days later, a new play suddenly appeared in the capital. A noble young man was saved by an orphan girl, and they secretly pledged their lives to each other. However, the orphan girl was of common birth, while the noble young man came from a prestigious family, making it absolutely unacceptable for her to become the mistress of the household. Of course, in the end, the two broke through the shackles of convention, loving and staying together. At the end of the play, the noble son passionately declared, "What does it matter if she is a commoner? Why can't a commoner become the mistress of the house? Repaying kindness is the way of a gentleman. If one cannot be a gentleman, how can one be the head of a clan?" The plot of the play was so familiar that as it gained popularity, public opinion instantly erupted. Why can't a commoner become the mother of a nation? If the crown prince cannot even repay kindness, how can he become the ruler of a nation? The crown prince's intention to marry the mute girl is a testament to his noble character. The crown prince should marry the mute girl. Almost simultaneously, a wondrous spectacle unfolded in the forest where the crown prince was hunting in spring. Hundreds of birds circled the horse carrying the mute girl. Chirping and singing, all birds pay homage to the phoenix. Thus, when the crown prince returned to the capital, the people lined the streets to welcome him. He held the mute girl in front of him, brimming with pride and ambition. 16 Quite clever indeed, using public sentiment as a pretext to force your majesty to concede. Moreover, it kills 3 birds with 1 stone. It cuts off Chu Heng's future, blocks my father's retreat, and creates a rift between Chu Heng and your majesty. What 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix? It's nothing but a trick to deceive the people. Your majesty would not suspect Chu Yu, who keeps to herself, but would instead believe that all of this was Chu Heng's doing. As for Chu Heng, in his excitement, he likely only felt that heaven was aiding him. How about it? Not bad. Is that all? I smiled. He sent someone to deliver that piece of white jade. Give me a quince, and I will give you a fine jade, not as a return gift, but to show our friendship will last. Additional sentence. Your Highness, why not press the advantage? Miss Xie, have you made up your mind? Naturally, since the alliance has been formed, the first move after rebirth cannot afford the slightest hesitation. 17 Regarding Chu Heng and Liu Ruo's ostentatious display, Hong Yang cursed for 3 full days, but shameless was about the harshest thing she could manage to say. This time, there wasn't even a whisper of gossip in the capital. Everyone was certain that the marriage between the eldest daughter of the Xie family and the crown prince would inevitably be called off. They were just waiting to see her become a laughingstock. Indeed, my marriage was called off, but my jokes, they didn't get to see them. It is said that on that day, the palace was bustling with excitement. Chu Heng brought along several scholars from the common people who strongly supported the mute girl becoming a consort, witnesses of the 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix, and a few enlightened monks. A large group of people knelt in a grand procession at the entrance of the Hall of Diligent Governance. My father received the news immediately and hurried into the palace with several uncles and disciples. For 100 years, the Xie family had never been so humiliated. Your Majesty, since His Highness the Crown Prince has made up his mind, please grant his wish. We, your subjects, have no complaints whatsoever. In a grand and imposing manner, another group knelt down. All for the sake of a mute girl. It has escalated to such an embarrassing extent. The emperor has already vented his anger and expressed his frustration, but now that things have come to this, even if he disagrees, there is nothing else he can do. Just as the rumors in the city suggest, who would dare to marry the eldest daughter of the Xie family, who has been engaged to the crown prince for over a decade and holds half the power in the court? Now that the engagement has been called off, by ruining Xie Shuin's life in this way, how will His Majesty ever face his loyal ministers in the future? Will the century-long harmony between the Xie family and the royal family be shattered as a result? At this critical moment, an unexpected figure emerged. Actually, I specifically sent Chuyu a note that day. Dress nicely. Don't be fooled by my father's serious demeanor. He's the most judgmental about appearances. So the rumors say, when that person appeared, his eyes and brows were dashingly handsome, as elegant as a painting, as if a celestial being had descended from the heavens. It wasn't until he knelt down that everyone snapped back to reality. This was the frail and sickly eldest prince, who lived in seclusion and was almost forgotten by the people, and as soon as he spoke, his words were even more astonishing. Father, I, your son, wish to marry Xie Shuyin as my wife. With a single sentence, he broke the deadlock. The emperor suddenly realized he had forgotten he still had this son, who, despite his frail health, had already lived past the age of 18, defying the state preceptor's prophecy. My father suddenly realized that after not seeing him for several years, the eldest prince had grown into such an extraordinary figure, appearing far more pleasing to the eye than the crown prince, who seemed as if under some spell in that moment. The ruler and his subject exchanged glances, understanding each other without a word. Only the crown prince, it was said, wore an expression of utter astonishment, nearly rising to his feet in shock before he could speak. The emperor had already issued his imperial decree. Lady Xieshu's marriage contract with the crown prince was annulled, and she was instead betrothed to the eldest prince. Additionally, the crown prince was granted permission to marry the mute girl Liu Ruo, with the wedding to be held on an auspicious day. This matter has come to an end. When I received the imperial decree, I felt a long-lost sense of joy. The first move went so smoothly, which was beyond my expectations. From this, it can be seen that choosing the right allies is very important. Just as I had received the imperial decree, Chu Heng arrived right after. Finally able to marry the beauty, he didn't go to spend time with Liu Ruo, but came to bring me trouble. I ordered, the crown prince and dogs are not allowed to enter. Unfortunately, only the wild geese in my courtyard dared to shout this at him. Chu Heng was furious outside the courtyard. Xie Shuyin, I think you've gone mad. I came here out of kindness to warn you. Chu Yu is nothing but a useless man. If you know what's good for you, you'd better find a way to call off the engagement. Otherwise, you'll be crying your eyes out in the future. I was in such a good mood that I couldn't even be bothered to raise an eyebrow at him. Slowly, I unfolded the letter in my hand. When will the next move be made? This ally of mine is indeed much more ambitious than the one outside. I picked up my pen and wrote, no rush, please enjoy the show. 18 Before Chu Heng killed me, he actually said a lot to me, but at that time, it was too painful, and I can't remember much of it. The most memorable line was, if it weren't for you, if it weren't for the Xie family, I could have stayed with Ruoruo until our hair turned white. In this lifetime, there is no me, and no Xie family. I want to see how he and Liu Ruo will stay together until their hair turns white. In the side room, the fragrance of tea wafted gently. An epidemic has broken out in the south. It is a good thing that His Highness the Crown Prince volunteered to provide disaster relief. But, is it appropriate to bring female family members along? Why wouldn't it be appropriate? The mute girl, although the crown princess has not yet entered the palace, she is like a phoenix attracting all birds, a person blessed by heaven. I heard she also knows medicine. Perhaps she can bring benefits to the people. The tea house is never short of people discussing current affairs. Is this the good show you were talking about? The crown prince went south to provide disaster relief, bringing along his mute fiancée who had not yet married into the family. For a time, the city was abuzz with discussions. I raised my eyebrows and sipped my tea, but of course, that wasn't all. Shuyin is as mellow as fine tea, and fortunately, someone is blind to it. Chuyu suddenly laughed. I lift my gaze. This person's appearance was indeed quite pleasing. Especially when smiling, the small mole at the corner of their eye added a unique charm. Over the past few months, we often drank tea together, speaking with tact and restraint, and got along quite harmoniously. While looking down, he indeed appears quite thin. Seeing me watching him, Chuyu glances at my teacup and leans over to pour tea for me. A prince, engaged in business, yet carries the scent of ink. "You're so quiet today." He glanced at me while pouring tea. "It's not that I'm quiet, I was thinking about Chu Heng's words. Chuyu is just a useless person." "Hey," I grabbed his collar directly. "Can you have children?" Chuyu's eyelids trembled slightly. Slowly, he set down the teapot in his hand, lifting his gaze. His eyes were calm, yet the mole at the corner of his eye was a vivid crimson. He pinched my chin. "Give it a try." 19. I really do want to try. If Chuyu can't conceive, wouldn't my entire plan be in vain? But no matter how unconventional I am, I can't try it in a tea house. A month later, the play I invited Chuyu to watch finally began. The Crown Prince went south to fight the epidemic, bringing along the mute girl he was deeply in love with. Unexpectedly, the mute girl contracted the epidemic and showed no signs of improvement for a long time. In his anxiety, the Crown Prince sent her back to the capital. It was one thing for the mute girl to return to the capital, but no one expected that the Crown Prince would also come back. The Crown Prince was drugged unconscious by the mute girl and brought back. "His Highness is already showing symptoms, and I'm almost dead myself. How could I leave him there to die?" In her previous life, Liu Ruo tearfully pleaded her case on paper, an orphan girl who knew a few characters but had never received any formal education. Everyone could only remain silent. A defeated general must still hold the flag without letting it fall. The Crown Prince volunteered to go to the epidemic area, not only foolishly sending the infected mute girl back to the capital but also abandoning everyone and running away himself. Moreover, the Crown Prince was not infected with the plague, it was just a common cold last time. This matter was suppressed by my father. The officials who went to the epidemic area were all disciples of his father. Before Chu Heng even entered the city, his father had already received the news. He intercepted them overnight and sent them back, preventing the matter from leaking out. But in this lifetime, his father was no longer willing to help him. As soon as Liu Ruo brought Chu Heng into the city, the capital erupted in an uproar. Various verbal and written criticisms of the Crown Prince are spreading throughout the common people. The emperor flew into a rage, angrily denouncing the Crown Prince for his misconduct and lack of virtue to match his position. In fact, public opinion can be influenced with some money, but such matters cannot be handled with official funds. The Crown Prince, slow to realize, only now discovered that over the past half-year, his private assets had either perished or been rendered useless. His private treasury was actually empty. He could not bring himself to lower his pride and ask others for money. He had no choice but to let the public opinion continue to ferment. Time to make the second move. I sent a letter to Chuyu. 20. I intend to expose Liu Ruo's pretense of being mute. Chu Heng has always firmly believed that Liu Ruo's love for him is pure and flawless. In his previous life, Liu Ruo brought him back to the capital, and afterward, he only sighed softly. Ruo is just too concerned about me. In this life, with no one to clean up after him, I wonder if he can still say such words now. Chuyu had long planted some maids and matrons in the Eastern Palace, and with a little trick, she made someone who was already talkative speak up. Not a difficult task. I originally intended to use the epidemic as a pretext, just to scare her a bit. Who would have thought that before I could even start planning, someone walked right into the line of fire? It is said that it was one evening. The Crown Prince has been scolded by the people, criticized by the officials, and reprimanded by His Majesty these past few days, leaving him utterly vexed and distressed. He hasn't visited his beloved Ruoruo's courtyard for 5 consecutive days. The Eastern Palace is vast, featuring an artificial lake and an arched bridge. That night, Liu Ruo, true to her name, sat delicately on the stone railing of the arched bridge, weeping as she gestured to the Crown Prince. It was Ruoruo who was thoughtless. Ruoruo has implicated your highness. Ruoruo is willing to atone for her sins. Your highness, in the next life, Ruoruo will repay your highness's deep affection. Thud, she jumped into the lake. The Crown Prince, whose love was deep but not long-lasting, naturally followed closely behind. Perhaps it was because the timing was a bit late. Or perhaps the crown prince had always been blind after struggling in the water for a long time. He still couldn't find anyone to make the act convincing. Liu Ruo truly didn't know how to swim after flailing around for a few moments. She still couldn't wait for anyone to come to her rescue at the critical moment. The instinct for survival took over, and she cried out hoarsely, "Help! Help! Your Highness! Your Highness! Ruoruo is here." It is said that His Highness the Crown Prince's expression at that time was quite a spectacle. Unfortunately, he put on quite a show 3 times, and I didn't get to see any of them after that. The Eastern Palace was filled with either angry shouts or wailing cries within a few days. The commotion even reached the Hall of Diligent Governance. The Crown Prince knelt on the ground, refusing to rise. "Father, I implore you to retract your decree. I wish to annul the marriage." 21. My mother taught me from a young age that as a woman, especially one from a noble family, love is a terrifying thing. Love should only be given 7 parts, leaving 3 for oneself. As the Crown Prince, did no one teach Chu Heng? Perhaps, or perhaps he has been spoiled since childhood. Although the Empress is a second wife, she is charming and beautiful, enjoying the Emperor's exclusive favor. Your Majesty had a legitimate eldest son who was bedridden with illness, and later, several delicate princesses. It wasn't until Chu Heng was 14 that another young prince was born. Chu Heng was born to naturally occupy all the royal resources. He also naturally believed that everyone and everything should revolve around him. He will marry whomever he wants, and he will have his way. If he does not want to marry someone, no one can force him. His Majesty was so enraged that he nearly fainted, and directly drew the imperial sword. The whole city was in an uproar. He was the one who insisted on marrying, and with the wedding date approaching, he was also the one who refused to go through with it. How should the common people view him? How should they view the imperial decree of His Majesty? Of course, he didn't actually go through with the beheading. He just kicked him a few times and told him to get lost. After being told to get lost, Chu Heng ended up rolling right into my courtyard. At that time, I had just finished testing with Chu Yu and had no desire to move at all, but there was no one left in the courtyard, and he pounded on the door so loudly it shook the heavens. When the door opened, I finally got to see the spectacular expression on the Crown Prince's face. 22. To speak of Chu Yu, there is a certain sharpness in his nature that is characteristic of a prince. Seeing that I was about to get up, he pressed against my neck and bit me twice. Chu Heng clearly saw it. His eyes were filled with shock, surprise, and even a hint of complexity. It took him a long time to find his voice. "Shuyin, you too." I adjusted my collar and tilted my head to look at him. "Tired of living by the rules, so you want to rebel? What's wrong with that?" Chu Heng suddenly grew furious. "You haven't even left the inner chambers yet. Do you have any sense of shame? Your words are inappropriate, imperial brother." Just as I was about to speak, a voice like jade beads came from the inner hall. "You and that mute girl have already engaged in an improper relationship without a matchmaker. What's wrong with us?" Chu Heng didn't expect the person to still be in my room, his face alternating between red and pale. "I'm not like my royal brother, breaking off engagements with one today and another tomorrow. The one I set my eyes on, I remain faithful to from beginning to end." Chu Heng's face was left with nothing but paleness. "Also, Shuyin is not for you to call. You should address her as imperial sister-in-law." Chu Heng's lips trembled, but no words came out. "I thought he was going to call me imperial sister-in-law. Boring." He closed the door with his arm. "Shuyin." Chu Heng blocked the door. "Shuyin, Liu Ruo deceived me. Shuyin, it was her meddling that caused us to end up like this. Shuyin, listen to me. A few days ago I had a dream, and in it, the one marrying you was clearly me. Madam." Chu Yu directly changed the form of address. "The quilt has grown cold, and I am frail, so I feel chilly. Your Highness the Crown Prince, would you like to go inside and speak with His Highness the eldest prince?" Chu Heng fell silent. I closed the door. 23. Chu Heng, for reasons unknown, fell ill upon returning home, as if he had suffered a great shock. There was no longer the liveliness of the Diligent Governance Hall or the Eastern Palace to watch. However, preparations for the grand wedding between me and Chu Yu began in the mansion, leaving no room for idleness. That day, I was sorting through my dowry when an unexpected guest arrived. Liu Ruo knelt before me as soon as she saw me, weeping until her face was drenched in tears. "Miss Xie, Please go to the Eastern Palace and see His Highness. I sidestepped, pulling the hem of my skirt away just before she could grab it. Monsieur, His Highness is gravely ill and cannot wake up no matter what. In his dreams, he keeps calling your name. If you go see him, perhaps he will wake up. Hearing Liu Ruo's voice for the second time in 2 lifetimes is truly not easy. I looked down at her from above, not particularly inclined to respond. Monsieur, you and His Highness share a childhood bond. Please, go to the Eastern Palace. Liu Ruo began kowtowing again. It was my foolish hope. As long as Monsieur agrees, I am willing to become a concubine. Monsieur, I beg of you. I had just frowned when a cold shout came from beside me. What is going on with the management? Are we letting any stray cats and dogs into the mansion? Wow, after Hongyang called the crown prince a dog, she's becoming more and more unrestrained. Butler, show the guest out. Liu Ruo was driven out of the mansion and never allowed back in. It was a trivial matter, but the more I pondered the meaning behind her words, the more uneasy I felt. Chu Heng fell ill and called out my name. He doesn't have such deep affection for me. Moreover, last time he said something about dreaming of marrying me. Could it be that it's strange enough that I've been reborn once, so nothing is impossible? Yes, but what if he remembers his past life? Where should I place my third move? 24 back then, I boasted to Chu Yu that as long as he allied with me, it would only take 3 moves for him to reclaim what was rightfully his. After dying such a tragic death in my previous life, there's no way I'd let Chu Heng sit comfortably as the crown prince or even ascend the throne. I have someone keeping an eye on the Eastern Palace. Chu Heng has already woken up and appears to be normal. Nothing significant has happened at the Eastern Palace either. The entrance to the diligence hall is empty. Chu Heng did not press for the cancellation of the engagement. Instead, he postponed his wedding date with Liu Ruo. This only made me more uneasy. Chu Heng's nature is such that he never gives up until he achieves his goal. Could it be that he postponed the wedding because he also knew that these days were coming to an end? My third move was made on a certain night a month later. That night, His Majesty passed away silently in the autumn breeze. 25 Since ancient times, the night of an emperor's passing has always been the most crucial night, but in Chu Heng's case, it was an exception. He had no competitors in his previous life. The emperor passed away in his sleep and was only discovered by the palace attendants in the morning. Chu Heng took over the throne without any trouble, calmly and smoothly. But in this lifetime, there is Chu Yu, there is me. As long as my third move is made well enough and accurately enough, it won't be difficult to kick Chu Heng out of the game. I am preparing everything according to plan, having a heart-to-heart talk with my father, providing the defense layout of the Chu Yu Imperial Palace, writing letters to my 2 elder brothers. Everything in the Eastern Palace remains normal as usual. Chu Heng attended court as usual, while Liu Ruo continued to weep and wail. Before long, a month had passed. When night fell, I sent a letter to Chu Heng. Meet at the moat at midnight. 26. Chu Heng and I actually still have some fond memories. Before Liu Ruo appeared, Chu Heng accompanied me to the moat to release lanterns on every birthday of mine. When I was young, I didn't understand shyness and would always speak my wishes out loud. Within a few days, the things I wanted would be sent over from the Eastern Palace. As I grew older and stopped voicing them, Chu Heng would still manage to learn about my preferences from those around me. When I arrived at the moat, he was already there. With just one glance, I knew my guess was correct. The newly appointed crown prince and someone who had been emperor for 10 years had completely different looks in their eyes. Shuyin, it's been years since we last came here. He gazed at the murky moat. At this hour, there were naturally no lanterns. I remember that year you slipped down there. He pointed to a rock in the river below. You cried and cried in fright. It was I who pulled you up. Your Highness has an excellent memory. I smiled. I don't remember. So as soon as you returned, you intended to distance yourself from me. Is that it? What else? I glanced at him and said, wait for you to kill me again. Chu Heng's eyebrow twitched slightly, his voice lowered. Shuyin, I was wrong to blame you. It was the Chen family. Only when I pursued the Chen family did I learn that the little maid by Liu Ruo's side came from the Chen family. After learning of her plan to fake her death, I switched her medicine and framed the Xie family. I believed you, so I didn't save her in time, but she actually died. I don't really want to hear it. There was something suspicious about what happened back then. No need to think to know, but what good does knowing the inside story do what shouldn't have been done? He had already done long ago, even if she were to take her own life out of shame and anger because I advised you to take her as a concubine. So what? I stared coldly at Chu. Chu Heng, whether or not to take her as a concubine is entirely up to you. You saw that the emperor firmly refused, and you wavered, didn't you? Yet, because of a well-intentioned suggestion from me, you want to exterminate my entire clan. I thought, I don't want to hear it. The autumn wind rustles with a chill. Chu Heng gazes at me with deep eyes, then suddenly smiles. I know where the problem lies. He pulls me forward, stopping in front of a large tree. He actually brought Liu Ruo along as well. He tied her hands and feet, gagged her mouth, and bound her to a tree trunk. Liu Ruo's eyes were already red from crying. As soon as she saw us, she let out muffled sobs, and tears began to fall again. Those who deceive the sovereign shall be executed, almost in the blink of an eye. Chu Heng drew the sword from his waist. A single strike sealed the throat. 27. This was the beloved he had spoken of so fervently. The person before him was likely not just Chu Heng from 10 years later, back when he killed me. His face was still pale today, with a single sword strike. His expression remains unchanged. I clench my fists tightly, feeling satisfied now. Liu Ruo's eyes remained unclosed. I averted my gaze. Shuyin, I know I was wrong. All those years, I regretted it every single day. I built for you. Shut up. I didn't want to hear another word from him. Chu Heng's eyes darkened once more, then he laughed. The third quarter of the Cho hour. You were waiting for this moment, weren't you? The third quarter of the Cho hour, the exact time the imperial physician had declared the emperor's true passing in the previous life. Shuyin, do you think that without the Xie family, and by dragging along the useless Chuyu, you can win? I will make you see with your own eyes who wins and who loses tonight. Chu Heng pulled me onto his horse and headed straight for the imperial city. Just as we entered the city gate, a beam of light rose from the direction of the palace, the signal flare used by the Eastern Palace. It was likely informing him that the emperor had passed away. The horses charged through the palace gates as if entering an unguarded territory. The imperial guards within the palace had already been taken control of by Chu Heng. The eunuchs in the palace looked panicked. Kneeling at the sight of horses, disputes had already been witnessed in front of His Majesty's bedchamber. The area was densely packed with people. The 10 guards of the Eastern Palace were fully deployed, with the Imperial Forest Army, the capital garrison, and the Xie family army scattered among them. Chu Hengyi pulled the reins, and the heavens shook with a unified shout. Your Highness, who wins and who loses is clear at a glance. 28. Chu Yu was held by the neck by 2 guards from the Tenrate mansion. My 2 brothers, who had traveled from afar, had their hands bound, with knives also pressed against their necks. The Xie family army all knelt on one knee. How pitiful. Chu Heng dismounted and extended his hand to me. Come, my queen. I only looked at him. Chu Heng extended his hand closer, his expression so devout. Shuyin, in this lifetime, I want you to be the happiest empress. I glanced at the densely packed crowd standing all around, then looked up at the moon in the sky. The perfect moment. I looked at Chu Heng, tilting my head slightly. Did we win? Chu Heng frowned, glanced around, and a flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes. The Xie family's army is too small in number. Did you notice, unfilial son? At that moment, a loud shout came from ahead. Who do you think you are, calling yourself Zhen? Chu Heng looked in disbelief at the figure standing at the entrance of the bedchamber, draped in sleeping robes. Your Majesty. 29. My third move had not actually been disrupted by Chu Heng's rebirth, because I know, people always like to judge others by their own standards, especially now that he has become such a cruel and bloodthirsty tyrant. In his eyes, on this night, I would undoubtedly use the Xie family's power to occupy the palace, alter the emperor's will, and push Chu Yu to the throne. He wouldn't consider any other possibility, because he too eagerly awaits this night, the day he returns to stand above all others. But I will not let him have his way. From the very beginning, my third move was never about a palace coup. His Majesty is a very good emperor, diligent in governance, loving the people as his own children. He held the Xie family in both reverence and high regard since it was known that he would pass away silently on this night. Why couldn't precautions be taken earlier? Chu Heng had only been reborn for a month and might not have been aware that, for over half a year, The emperor's health had been checked 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. The medicinal decoctions used were also far more potent than before. Your Majesty's health is actually much better than in the previous life. From the very beginning, I only wanted your Majesty to become suspicious of Chu Heng. The first move was like this, and the second move was the same. The third move was to create various illusions, making Chu Heng believe that we intended to support Chu Yu and launch a palace coup once he takes action, combined with all the previous grievances your Majesty has held against him. Deposing the crown prince is inevitable, of course. Credit must be given to Liu Ruo here. If it weren't for her, I would never have known that such a miraculous thing as a fake death drug existed in this world. We found her master, conducted several tests, and confirmed that it poses no harm to the body. Moreover, the duration of the fake death can be controlled based on the dosage, so in the original plan, your Majesty was also supposed to feign death once tonight. Chu Heng was reborn, and the only extra thing I did was invite him to the moat. If he had been in the palace, he would have noticed early on that the number of Xie's troops was off to seize the palace. How could that number possibly be enough? This night's palace coup certainly had His Majesty's cooperation. His Majesty trusted my father. My father said that Chu Heng might harbor ulterior motives, so it was worth a try, and so he decided to give it a try. He just didn't know that the medicine would make him feign death, nor did he know that this was all part of our unorthodox scheme. I saw Chu Heng again 3 months later, in the imperial prison. 30 autumn turned to winter, and snow began to fall from the sky. It was strikingly similar to the day I died. The prison cell was bitterly cold. Chu Heng had grown much thinner, his hands and feet shackled with iron chains, clad in thin prison garb as he leaned against the corner. In truth, it shouldn't have been this wretched, but he had been reborn, and in rallying the imperial guards and the capital garrison, his methods had been ruthless. His Majesty was extremely disappointed in him and did not even want to look at him before his death. Yes, despite using the best imperial physicians and the finest medicine, His Majesty's life was only extended by 3 months. Hearing voices, Chu Heng looked up, then lowered his head again, perhaps realizing that the person who arrived was different from usual. He looked up once more. Her eyes lit up with a sparkle. As soon as I entered the cell, he stood up and moved closer, trying to take my hand. I dodged, and his hand froze in mid-air. Shuyin, you still won't forgive me. I couldn't help it and laughed out loud again. Shuyin, it's rare that we've both returned. This is a chance given by heaven for us to start over. I don't quite see it that way. I kept a distance of 3 feet from him. Perhaps the reason we've both returned is that some people were too wronged. Chu Heng's gaze dimmed once more. Chu Heng, do you know why, after 10 years of marriage, I have never been pregnant? Chu Heng's eyes fell upon my abdomen. Because from the day I married you, my father gave me a contraceptive. The influence of the maternal relatives is too strong. It is not yet the right time to have a child. It would be best to wait until after achieving success and retiring before raising children. My father, my brothers, and my clansmen were all so loyal to him. But in truth, we once had a child. Chu Heng's pupils suddenly contracted sharply. When you killed me, I was already 3 months pregnant. Why didn't I tell you? Is that it? I walked closer to him, lifting my gaze to meet his. Why would I want to bear a child for someone like you? Chu Heng's face turned ashen inch by inch, revealing a rare expression of pain. Chu Heng, I was truly worried you hadn't returned. I was afraid you'd think you died unjustly. I drew the dagger from my hand and swiftly plunged it into his chest. Chu Heng stared at me in shock, the pain on his face spreading to the depths of his eyes. I gazed at him quietly. This is what you owe me. 31. The snow was falling even heavier. It covered the palace path. Chu Yu is waiting for me outside. The road is slippery. He crouches down. I'll carry you on my back. I climb onto his back. Actually, he is really quite thin. He was sick just a while ago, but honestly, I really don't feel like walking on my own. His back isn't very warm either, with only a faint heat rising from the hollow of his neck. But I lean against it anyway, perhaps because we've worked so well together these days, or perhaps because he never asks an extra why. I couldn't help but shed a few tears. He suddenly sighed and said, "You're not unloved. Is it possible that I earned all that silver just so that when you become empress, the treasury would be full and more stable?" I immediately jumped down from his back. Hey, mission accomplished. Trying to play the emotional card with me. Want me to soften up and back down? Chuyu rubbed his nose. Got caught. 32 On the day Chuyu ascended the throne, he split the national seal in two as agreed. We would jointly govern the country and deliberate on state affairs together, yet it seems I misjudged him. He did not appear particularly enthusiastic about being emperor first. He modestly claimed to lack the energy, promoted my father to regent, and entrusted most of the political affairs to him later. He simply threw the other half of the state seal to me. I actually enjoyed discussing matters with him. Talking with someone who has a sharp mind is pleasant. Half a year later, I became pregnant. He paid even less attention to court affairs, often staying wherever I was. When asked, he would say that his father-in-law was present, so he felt at ease. TSK. I used to praise him for being ambitious. The child was born smoothly, a prince. Chuyu was very happy, holding the child all day without letting go. I wanted to directly appoint him as the crown prince. I naturally thought of Chu Hung and shook my head. The following year, I wanted to expand the imperial harem. Can't I have a child all by myself? Chuyu actually refused. Physically weak, he said no way. With that determination he showed even when he was sick. And he tells me he's physically weak. It doesn't matter if he disagrees. Anyway, as a result, I turned around and found that the half of the imperial seal he had thrown to me had been taken back by him again in the third year. The child learned to walk and speak. The palace gradually filled with much laughter and joy. I began to urge Chuyu to go to the front court. My father is getting old. How could he handle everything himself? I wanted half of the state seal, not because I was particularly interested in state affairs. It was simply a case of once bitten, twice shy. In the fourth year, I found myself pregnant again. Time seemed to have never passed so quickly. Occasionally, Chuyu would ask me, how many more years do I have left to live? See, this person is quite shrewd. Not asking doesn't mean I can't figure out my own abnormalities. As soon as he asked, I replied, it's tomorrow, hurry up. Once you're gone, I'll use your money to keep a whole palace of male favorites, you know. I'm the most unconventional of all. In the fifth year, the second child was born, a little princess. Chuyu's entire face was filled with joy, and he said, since we're not establishing a crown prince, why not establish a crown princess? I didn't want to pay him any mind. In the fifth year, Chuyu turned 25. Actually, he has already lived 1 year longer than in his previous life. I actually didn't feel displeased. After all, my earliest plan was to keep the child and get rid of the father. Someone like Chuyu, who doesn't even require me to take action myself, is simply perfect. In the fifth year, Chuyu took me to watch the sunrise. At the moment when the morning glow broke through the clouds, the entire Shangjing city was calm and peaceful. On the way down the mountain, I silently tugged at his sleeve. Time stood still, serene and beautiful. Whether long or short, seize the day. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My sister and I were both poisoned and rendered mute. There was only one antidote pill, but my sister snatched it and swallowed it first. From then on, her singing captivated the capital, and she successfully entered the Eastern Palace as the crown princess. Little did anyone know, the empress believed that entertainers brought ruin to the state, so she had my sister confined to the cold palace, where she met a tragic end in the lotus pond. And because I could not speak, I could only marry a military general. After 3 years of guarding the border, the general achieved great merits, and I was also granted the title of first-rank lady. But when I went to the cold palace to visit my sister, she locked me in a beast cage, where I was torn apart and devoured. I opened my eyes again. Before me lay an antidote. My sister pushed the medicine box to my lips, her eyes frantically signaling me to take it. I leisurely picked up the pill. Finally, in this lifetime, I can speak up for myself. It's just a pity for my sister. There is a path to heaven she won't take, and no gate to hell, yet she insists on barging in. There is only one antidote here. Have you two sisters made up your minds? Father's gaze shifted back and forth between me and Chuwana. Chuwana, who has always been arrogant and domineering, now pushed the antidote in front of me, a frantic look in the eyes. Hurry up and take it. I picked up the pill and casually glanced at her. I noticed a flash of cunning in her eyes. Oh, I knew it. Only you could do something so contrary to your nature. She has been reborn as well. But my mother shot me a fierce glare and hurriedly tried to dissuade her. Wana, the imperial selection is approaching. Is your future more important, or your sister? Can't you even tell the difference? I lifted my eyelids to look at my father, but he lowered his head as if he hadn't heard anything, seeing that I hadn't taken the antidote. Chuwana stomped her feet anxiously and quickly wrote with a brush. Mother, of course my sister is more important. I'll discuss the selection matter with you later. My father looked pleased. Wana is truly the good daughter I have raised. He wanted me to take my sister as an example and reminded me not to forget her kindness. I tilted my head back and swallowed the medicine, then obediently bowed after a moment and acknowledged his words, seeing the medicine take effect. So quickly, there was relief in my parents' eyes, but even more so, pain. Their eyes were full of pity and affection as they looked at my sister. My name is Chuyuna, and I share the same mother as Chuwana. My father holds the position of Minister of Rights, and he claims to treat both of his daughters equally, yet, for some reason, when it comes to good things, it always seems to be only Chuwana who benefits. If it weren't for the fact that everyone knew we had been poisoned, I doubt I would have ever been allowed to see this antidote in my previous life. Chuwana snatched the antidote away. She sang a captivating song that moved the crown prince, who then selected her as his concubine. Little did anyone expect that she would spend her days indulging in wine and opera with the crown prince, which eventually drew the displeasure of the empress. On the empress's birthday, she took the stage to perform. However, the empress accused her of corrupting the nation's fate with decadent music, and banished her to the cold palace. In the end, she met a tragic death in the lotus pond. Meanwhile, I was hastily married off by my family to a young general and followed him to the border after the wedding. 3 years later, he earned honors through military achievements and requested a first-rank noble title for me. The empress even broke protocol by granting me the title of commandery princess and had a mansion built for me. Everyone said I, a mute, was incredibly fortunate. Not only did I share a deep love with the general, but I also gained the royal family's favor, with a future full of limitless promise. But when I went to the cold palace to visit my sister, she drugged me and threw me into the beast garden. The horrific scene of being torn apart and devoured by wild beasts still haunts my mind. I closed my eyes, my sister's furious screams still echo in my ears. Chuyuna, I should have been the one in the spotlight. How dare you surpass me? Go die, just die. Until the unwelcome voices of her parents sounded. Since you're better now, go downstairs. Don't cause any more trouble for your sister. Slowly opening her eyes, she released her tightly clenched palm. She saw the smugness in Chuwana's eyes. I bowed slightly. Your daughter takes her leave. After stepping over the threshold, a cold smile curled at the corner of my lips. Since she's so eager to marry the general, become a titled lady, and ascend to the rank of princess, I'll grant her wish. I just don't know if she knew that this good fortune cost me half my life. Would she still be so eager to fight me for it? My sister couldn't speak, so the family sent me to the palace in her place to participate in the imperial consort selection. Just like in my previous life, my father, who works in the Ministry of Rights, hired the courtesan to teach me how to sing opera. I learned with such skill that I even sang better than my sister in my previous life. Father immediately began to take me seriously at a birthday banquet, dressed in feathered robes and rainbow skirts. I sang and danced so well that I became the standout among my peers in the selection process. Naturally, this also stirred up jealousy in others. Soon, rumors spread that I frequented pleasure quarters and had long lost my innocence. Others claimed I was born with a seductive nature, capable of bringing ruin to the nation and its people. There were even those who tampered with my food, attempting to poison me. All of these were experiences Chuwana had endured in her previous life. Even though I was mute at the time, I still defended her with all my might. I even tested poison on myself and nearly died from it. But now, when I'm facing these troubles, she pretends not to know. What's more, she stands by and watches the fire from the opposite shore, enjoying the spectacle. I was so crushed by public opinion that I couldn't hold my head up. While she became the apple of our parents' eyes once again, they discussed arranging a good marriage for her, even going so far as to plan a grand wedding procession to betroth her to the eldest son of the Minister of Personnel. The eldest son was handsome, eloquent, and a man of great talent, but my sister was unwilling. She threw away the marriage proposal and stubbornly pestered our father to take her to play polo. The polo field was muddy and far from elegant. The noble ladies of the capital valued their status and would never go there unless for important matters. Fearing her father would not agree, she even wrote on paper that a deity had appeared in her dream, telling her that her destiny lay not in the minister's residence but on the polo field. Her parents, believing there might be a chance to cure her muteness, gave their permission. Only I knew she actually wanted to run into young General Zheng in this life. She chose not to become the crown prince's consort. Instead, she aspired to be a highly favored and honored commandery princess. Chuwana used to be arrogant and aloof, which led to her being ostracized and isolated. Now she humbled herself and actively sought the favor of other noble ladies, unexpectedly gaining many close friends in the inner chambers. Even the mischievous and cunning little princess was completely charmed by her. When she heard that my sister had resolutely given the antidote to me, her younger sister, and willingly became mute herself, she actually slapped me right in front of everyone. I argued my case with reason, but my father punished me by making me kneel in the ancestral hall for the crime of disrespecting the princess. I clearly did nothing wrong, yet because she gave me the antidote, I became an outcast in the eyes of everyone. 3 days later, my legs had gone numb from kneeling. Chuwana came with her girlfriends to bring me food. When the food box was opened, the meal inside had already spoiled. The steamed bun was stuffed with foul stones from a cesspit. That chicken was a dead frog from the lotus pond. Seeing that I refused to eat, Chuwana pretended to be heartbroken and shed a few tears. The little princess couldn't bear to see her cry, so she ordered the servants to force-feed me. It wasn't until I was vomiting blood that they finally clapped their hands in satisfaction. I could see clearly that Chuwana was hiding behind the little princess, her eyes brimming with smugness. What good is your enchanting voice in this lifetime? Aren't you still easily controlled by me? After I left the ancestral hall, I fell seriously ill. Just as I recovered, it was time for the crown prince's consort selection. Although my sister could not speak, she got her wish to come and go freely at the horse farm, traveling and enjoying the scenery with great joy. The selection of consorts was personally overseen by the empress. She deliberately called me forward to question me. Chu Yuna, do you know your crime? I was so frightened that I quickly knelt on the ground, not daring to raise my head. I do not know, Your Highness. I beg Your Highness to investigate clearly. The empress sneered coldly. They all say your singing voice is enchanting, and your charm is innate. In my view, this is nothing but decadent music that brings disaster to the nation and its people. Guards, tear her mouth apart and throw her into the lotus pond to feed the fish. I trembled uncontrollably, lifting my head hurriedly to explain. Your Highness, I haven't. You still dare to argue. Guards, slap her mouth. I feel uneasy inside. How could I have offended the empress so soon in my previous life? It was clearly my sister who became the crown prince's consort and angered her by singing a song of everlasting longing at her birthday banquet. You must know that everlasting longing was composed by the emperor in memory of his late first empress, and the current empress is his second wife. But now, before I even had the chance to showcase my talents, the empress already wanted my life. This made no sense, neither emotionally nor logically. It wasn't until my gaze fell upon the smug little princess that I understood. So, there was something strange going on behind the scenes. The palace maids and eunuchs tried to drag me away, but I refused to comply. In response, Matron Li slapped me several times. Do you think just because you have a pleasant voice, you can bewitch His Highness? Don't tell me you're dreaming of becoming the crown princess. The empress waved her hand impatiently. Take her away quickly. Don't let the crown prince see her. Suppressing my panic, I hurriedly kowtowed to the empress with a loud thud. I am not afraid to die, but I have urgent matters to report to your majesty. Concerning the fate of the nation, the little princess intervened. Your majesty, do not trust the words of this seductress. However, upon hearing that it involved matters of national importance, the empress hesitated. I requested brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, and wrote down the matter I wished to report on the paper. After folding it, I presented it to the empress. She avoided the crowd and, moments later, her eyes widened in shock. Is this true? Absolutely true. If I have spoken falsely, I am willing to face death. After a long while, the empress burned the note and waved me off, effectively letting me go. The selection of consorts officially began. Not only was I not eliminated, But I also gained the Empress's considerable favor. After the song ended, the Crown Prince personally tied the sachet he carried with him around my waist. The little princess was so angry her eyes turned red. I knew she would definitely tell my sister everything. Sure enough, as soon as I got home, I was stopped outside the house. My mother made me kneel and brought out the family discipline to punish me. Chuwana pretended to have just happened to pass by, with the little princess by her side. As soon as mother saw the princess arrive, she grew even angrier and used all her strength to whip my calves with the vine. After the little princess left, father returned from court beaming with joy. When he came home and saw me lying on the sickbed, he was immediately filled with fear and unease. Chuwana pretended to bring me medicine, but he slapped her to the ground. You wretched thing. Usually, you and your mother treat her poorly, and I let it slide, but now that Yuna is about to become the crown princess, how can you be so narrow-minded? My sister was stunned by the sudden slap. She never expected that her father, who had always doted on her, would hit her for my sake. She gritted her teeth, her head slightly lowered, her eyes filled with suppressed hatred. I always knew she hated me. Pretending to be afraid, I nestled into father's arms and complained, "Dad, the way sister looks at me is just like she's looking at an enemy. She was the one who willingly gave me the antidote back then. Could it be that she regrets it now?" My father shielded me in his embrace and angrily scolded her. "Your sister has finally caught the queen's eye, and yet you go and stir up trouble with the little princess. Do you think your father's position as Minister of Rights is too secure?" Chuwana gritted her teeth in frustration. She wanted to defend herself, but she could only stammer without making a sound, growing so anxious that fine beads of sweat broke out on her forehead. I pretended to feel sorry for her and tugged at father's sleeve. "Forget it, we're all family." Father praised me for my sisterly affection and understanding, saying I was a blessed person who would surely bring honor to the family in the future. He shot a dissatisfied glance at the tearful Chuwana, then turned and left in a huff. Only Chuwana and I remained in the room. She quickly walked to the table, picked up a pen and paper, and wrote, "If I hadn't given you the antidote, how could you be worthy of the Empress and the Crown Prince's favor? Do you really think you can become the Crown Princess? Go ahead and gloat for now. Just wait until I turn the tables. I will surely trample you under my feet." I stared at the 5-finger mark on her face and raised an eyebrow. "All right, then we'll see." Counting the days, General Zheng should be returning to the capital soon. After reporting to the court this time, he will go to the racecourse to play polo. In my previous life, I met him at the racecourse, and by a twist of fate, we pledged our lives to each other. In this life, Chuwana must be dreaming of marrying General Zheng and being granted the title of a noble lady in the future. Watching her figure disappear at the door, I took out a hairpin to snuff out the lamp's flame. In the darkness, I curled the corners of my lips. I wonder if my delicate sister can withstand the wedding night with the general. On the day General Xiao Zheng returned to the capital in triumph, the emperor was overjoyed and specially granted a polo match at the horse grounds. But my sister was not at the horse grounds watching the match. None of her close friends knew where she had gone, and even the little princess could not find her anywhere. Yet I knew where she was. Outside the men's changing tent, a servant was craning his neck and peering around anxiously. Chuwana was truly bold. Seeing young General Zheng arrive, her face lit up with joy. Zheng Yi reined in his horse as he passed by my hiding spot and stopped before Chuwana. The young general's gaze was icy cold. Dressed in black with ink-dark hair, his sword-like eyebrows slanting sharply toward his temples, and his phoenix eyes exuding authority. Even without anger, Chuwana was utterly captivated. Yet I, hiding behind the tree, couldn't help but tremble all over. He carelessly tossed the reins, and Chuwana, caught off guard, ended up injuring her neck. "TSK, you're a woman." Chuwana, disguised as a servant boy, blushed and tried to run away, but was caught by a large hand. Meeting Zheng Yi's deep gaze, Chuwana's face flushed crimson. She just shook her head, refusing to speak. "Are you hurt?" Chuwana's tears fell one by one. Her fragile appearance made Zheng Yi's breath catch, but he soon sneered, looking as if he had seen through it all. "Which family's young lady is it this time?" Trying to form a connection with this general, yet Chuwana bit her lip, stubbornly refusing to speak. "This temperament is exactly like mine from the previous life." Just then, a few matrons came over, paid their respects to him, and asked what had happened. But is the young servant not attending to you properly? I have a method for managing household staff that will surely bring him into line. These matrons from official families, every one of them has several lives on their hands. If you fall into their clutches, can you expect to come out unscathed? Chu-Wana was greatly alarmed, shaking her head desperately, weeping so pitifully it would move anyone to compassion. In the end, Zheng Yi's heart softened. He waved his hand and let her follow him into the house. I hunched over and took a few more steps forward, hiding outside the tent. A moment later, Zheng Yi began to question her. Why are you dressed in men's clothing? A moment later, he frowned while holding a note. You are the daughter of the Minister of Rites. I've heard that Chu-Wana is the most talented woman of our dynasty, so why can't you speak? Chu-Wana hurriedly wrote down the reason with her brush. Zheng Yi understood in his heart. In ancient times, there was Kong Rong yielding pears. Today, there is Miss Chu yielding medicine. Her heart is sincere and truly admirable and praiseworthy. Listening to the increasingly heavy breathing inside the tent, I knew that Chu-Wana's scheme had succeeded. Who would have thought that the little princess would actually bring her servants and find her way here? I stood up to stop her, but she pushed me down, accidentally breaking through the tent's screen. Looking at the two figures entangled on the white fox fur blanket, the little princess let out a sharp cry. In the next second, she viciously lashed her golden whip toward Zheng Yi. You shameless man. It turned out that the little princess had secretly given her heart to him and was waiting for Zheng Yi to return to the capital so she could ask the emperor for a marriage arrangement. Little did she expect that he couldn't restrain himself and ended up fooling around with a young servant. Ignoring the burning pain on my body, I knelt down and kowtowed. I beg your highness to forgive my sister. She didn't mean to do it. Only then did the little princess realize that the one fooling around with her beloved was actually her own close friend. Overwhelmed with rage, she fainted on the spot. I hastily escorted her back to the palace, and the empress was greatly displeased upon learning of the incident. As their affair had already been exposed, the emperor hastily arranged a marriage to preserve the dignity of his official. The wedding was scheduled to take place 3 days later. Upon returning home, her father, the Minister of Rites, was so furious that he threatened to disown her. Her mother, who had always protected her, personally administered the family punishment, replacing the willow branch with a thorny vine. Chu-Wana's calves were left bruised and bleeding. The wedding was hastily and carelessly arranged. What should have been a glorious event to bring honor to the family became a mere fig leaf for the Zheng and Chu families. Before the grand wedding, Chu-Wana tightly gripped my wrist, forcing me into the study. From her blazing eyes, I could read her fury. I smiled faintly, prying her fingers off one by one. Sister, isn't this exactly what you wanted? If I hadn't helped you make this happen, General Zheng would likely have become the imperial son-in-law by now. Chu-Wana was stunned. She quickly wrote on the paper, I was supposed to have a grand wedding procession stretching for miles, but thanks to you, I've become the laughingstock of the entire nation. Chu-Yuna, just you wait. One day, I will make you pay. One day I raised an eyebrow and casually tossed the note she had written into the brazier. I took out a handkerchief and wiped my hands. Then I'll be waiting. Just then, the crown prince sent an invitation, asking me to watch a play with him. I gave her an apologetic smile. Sister, how did this retribution come so quickly? The crown prince is still waiting for me, so take your time and enjoy yourself. The pear orchard in spring presented a scene of perfect peace and harmony. On the way, however, I overheard 2 palace attendants whispering to each other. I was just in the small garden and saw the crown prince and the daughter of Minister Liu flying a kite hand in hand. What about Miss Chu? I heard her sister is not virtuous. A girl from such a family must be the same. The empress would never favor her. I pretended not to hear and hurried past with my head lowered. The empress requested an aria from The Romance of the Western Chamber. Meanwhile, the crown prince was exchanging flirtatious glances with the prime minister's daughter seated below. I remember during the selection, she was second, just below me. As the song ended, the empress suddenly asked me, Yuna, do you wish to be the crown prince's consort or the principal consort? My heart tightened, but I kept my expression unchanged. She obediently kowtowed and replied to her, I know I am dull and unworthy of being a consort, let alone the crown princess. A flicker of surprise passed through the empress's eyes. You are quite different from your sister, who doesn't know her place. Rise and speak." I didn't dare, but the little princess helped me up. She looked much better, with plenty of energy and color in her cheeks, but she wasn't as hostile toward me as before, and even spoke up for me. "Mother, I think Sister Yoon is quite suitable, more than a match for my crown prince brother." The queen's expression darkened, and I quickly kowtowed to defend myself. The young princess speaks with childish innocence. Apart from having a pleasant voice, I have no other merits. The crown prince, with his noble and majestic bearing, deserves a match who is truly outstanding among men. I beg your majesty to see this clearly. Now that the queen has found a more suitable candidate, a mere minister's daughter like me is hardly worth considering. Besides, the Eastern Palace is a place that devours people without spitting out their bones. I should be avoiding it, not seeking it out." The queen nodded. "You are quite perceptive. When a suitable match arises, I will personally arrange your marriage." After the meeting, the little princess grabbed my hand and insisted we go to her mother to settle the matter. She pouted and muttered, "So what if he's the prime minister? Are we afraid of him?" "Sister Yoon, if you like my brother, I'll definitely help you win him over." I smiled faintly. I didn't understand why her attitude toward me had done a complete 180. She hemmed and hawed for a long time before finally explaining it to me. It turns out that day at the horse track, she had also realized that I deliberately let her catch Jing Yi and Chu Wana together. Although I was very angry, "I'm grateful that you made me turn back in time. Otherwise, if I had really married such a frivolous man, it would have ruined my life. And also, thankfully you sent me back to the palace in time. If I had really died, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy a life of luxury and wealth anymore." I pursed my lips and smiled at her, thinking how innocent and lively the little princess truly was. We ended up becoming good friends after several encounters. She said I was exceptionally clever, the first person to escape unscathed from the Queen Mother's grasp. "Sister Yoon, what exactly did you write on that note you gave to the Queen Mother?" She said she had begged the Queen Mother for a long time, but she still refused to tell her. I hesitated for a moment and was just about to speak when I heard someone shouting at the door, "The young lady has returned home." The little princess didn't want to see her, so she simply left through the back door. Chu Wana and Zheng Yi returned home hand in hand. They seem to have a good relationship, and the courtyard is filled with gifts for the homecoming visit. My parents' expressions softened a little. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, Chu Wana signaled for me to go to the study before the door was even closed. She eagerly wrote on a piece of paper, "I heard you were rejected by the Empress Dowager, who in the capital would dare marry someone the Crown Prince once fancied. Sister, your life is over." I took a sip of tea and remained silent. Her eyes were full of smugness as she continued to write. "I, on the other hand, am different. My husband dotes on me greatly, and soon I will be granted the title of a noble lady. In the future, I will even be made a princess. By then, I will have my husband's affection, a prestigious status, and our parents will shower me with love once again. As for you, you will only become the laughingstock of the capital." "Chu Yuna, you're so foolish. You've completely ruined a winning hand. Now, if you beg me, I might still consider our sisterly bond and have my husband find you a military officer to marry." After writing this, she snatched the teacup from my hand and drank it down triumphantly. I sighed inwardly. Did she think that by choosing my path in this reincarnated life, she could be happy forever? "Sister, are you really going to live your whole life as a mute who can't speak? Will your husband truly like a wife who can't even make a sound? How dull would that be in bed?" Chu Wana's smile instantly froze. From a young age, her voice was sweet, soft, and soothing, delighting her parents endlessly. But now, as she opened her mouth, not a single sound escaped her throat. My words grew even softer, yet they felt like a ghostly whisper. "Don't you want to speak again?" Her hands trembled with excitement, and her handwriting began to flow with wild abandon. Each word was filled with resentment. "Chu Yuna, what you owe me, you will pay back. Sooner or later, when my husband finds the antidote, I will make sure you die a miserable death." I sneered coldly. "There is only one antidote in the world, and it was obtained after my father sold the ancestral home." Chu Wana was humiliated by me. "Chu Yuna, you just wait. Not only will I find the antidote, but I will also find the poison. When that time comes, don't blame me for being ruthless." My gaze sharpened, judging by her expression. She didn't seem to be joking, and I understood. Clearly, sure enough, she still refused to let me go. Fine by me, I had no intention of letting her go either. I abruptly pushed back her sleeve. The cinnabar mark on the inside of her arm was still vividly red. I sneered, Are you still a virgin? Unexpectedly. This sentence was more effective than all the previous verbal attacks. Chu-Wana's eyes were filled with a near-maddening gloom, and she fiercely threw down the brush in her hand. She raised her hand to slap me. At that moment, the crack in the door suddenly widened. It turned out that Zheng Yi had suddenly received an imperial decree, stating that the barbarians were invading and ordering him to set off immediately to guard the border. Our parents, unable to find us sisters anywhere, sent someone to check on us. What are you doing? Stop. I threw myself into my mother's embrace, while my father trembled with rage. Out of respect for the new son-in-law, he merely drove Chu-Wana away, ordering her to accompany the general in. Guarding the frontier, Zheng Yi acted as if he were unaware of what had happened inside. Remaining as gentle as ever toward Chu-Wana, he reached out his hand to her, but Chu-Wana hesitated. Zheng Yi's face immediately darkened. What? My lady refuses. Chu-Wana was caught in a dilemma, holding the hem of her skirt as she glanced back at her home. Her parents, protective of her, were both urging her on. She bit her lip, steeled her heart, and stepped into the carriage. The moment our palms met, a chill crept into my heart. Watching the carriage disappear at the end of the alley, I curled my lips into a smile in my mother's embrace. Sister, soon you will taste the pleasures of intimacy. However, entering this military camp is the easy part. Surviving to leave it, that entirely depends on your fate. In my previous life, I married Zheng Yi. He didn't mind that I was mute, and to keep me away from the troubles in the capital, he took me with him to guard the border. Just when I thought a happy life was about to begin, the military camp became the biggest nightmare of my life. Only then did I understand why this young general had achieved so many military successes at such a young age. It turned out that he was impotent. In the city, on our wedding night, he didn't touch me. I thought it was because he respected and cherished me, but back at the camp, he drugged me. He threw me to those barbarian captives, then used me to trade for secret information from the captives. Every time I spent the night with him, I'd wake up feeling sore and in pain below. I thought it was his unrestrained indulgence, and I even kindly advised him to prioritize the nation and its people, until one time, he drugged me, but the guard accidentally spilled half of it in a half-asleep, half-awake state. I found myself lying among several barbarian men, and he stood outside the cage, reaching into his trousers. His eyes revealed a look of both pain and excitement. I was so frightened that I froze, tightly shutting my eyes. It was only then that I understood why he had agreed to marry me. It was only because I had been poisoned mute, unable to make a single sound during that act. In this way, no one could discover his peculiar habits, heart-wrenching pain, and to survive, I endured 3 years of such a life, all for the day when I could take revenge with my own hands. Perhaps it was because he still felt a trace of guilt toward me that he used his military achievements to secure me the title of a titled lady. Because the Empress was determined to abandon the Crown Prince's consort, yet she needed to give an explanation to my father, who had already risen to the position of Right Chancellor. That is why she made an exception and granted me the title of a princess. When I went to the Cold Palace to visit my sister, it was with the intention of joining forces with her to deal with Zheng Yi, but I never expected her to blame all her misfortunes on me. She caused my death. After being reborn, she snatched away the fate I had in my previous life, trying to become the winner in life. How ridiculous. 3 months later, I received a letter from her. Between the lines, it was filled with venom and malice. Chu-Yuna, you have ruined me. You knew exactly what kind of person Zheng Yi was, yet you stood by and did nothing. You must have been reborn too. You knew everything, yet you watched me fall with your own eyes. The rest of the letter was more of the same. Everyone is cursing me. I didn't expect her to find out so quickly. It's just a pity I couldn't witness her hysterical reaction in person. How could she blame me? This path was one she chose herself. Father sent good news. Wana is pregnant. We, as parents, can finally breathe a sigh of relief. I smiled faintly and lowered my head to drink tea. This child, she won't be able to carry it to term. How could Zheng Yi possibly allow her to give birth to a bastard of the barbarians? Sure enough, another month passed, and news came that Chu-Wana had miscarried. My parents sighed and lamented for a while, then turned their attention to me. The crown prince is getting married tomorrow, you'd better not go, to spare yourself the heartache. I obediently agreed. In a few days, it will be the empress's birthday. She specifically requested that you perform. Yuna, prepare well, and don't dwell on not marrying the crown prince. I understood their meaning. They wanted me to choose a husband at the birthday banquet, but in this life, I have no intention of marrying again. On the day of the birthday banquet, I was the last to appear. When it was my turn, the splendid attire my mother had prepared was unexpectedly missing, and the supervising eunuch urged me to take the stage. With no other choice, I borrowed a guard's armor and long sword. The originally planned musical accompaniment shifted from Song of Everlasting Regret to Endless Longing. The Empress was furious, her expression turning extremely unpleasant, suppressing the unease within. I began to perform the sword dance. Once made famous by Lady Gongsun, soon, the court musicians caught on and accompanied my performance. When the dance ended, I knelt on the ground, refusing to rise for a long time. The entire hall fell silent, and all eyes were fixed on me. How dare a mere minister's daughter be so insolent before the Empress? I believe she is dissatisfied with the Empress's arrangements, infatuated with the crown prince, and deliberately drawing attention to herself. The Empress's expression darkened, and, with a wave of her hand, she ordered me to be taken away, never to enter the palace again. This decree was no different from a death sentence for an official's family. The noble ladies watching the spectacle covered their lips and sneered. Everyone knows the Empress dislikes Everlasting Longing. The last person who sang it now has grass 3 feet high over their grave. They lifted a stone only to drop it on their own feet. Serves them right, as expected of a minor official's daughter. Shallow in insight and unfit for such occasions, she was clever to change it to a sword dance. But what a pity, this is a birthday banquet, and brandishing weapons is inauspicious. Yu Guangzhong. I caught a glimpse of a female official playing music. I took in the smug expression on her face. It was actually Chu Wana. She had actually managed to escape. Damn it, the little princess was so anxious she was spinning in circles. But the Empress wouldn't listen to a single word she said. Soon, palace attendants grabbed me roughly. I struggled and cried out urgently, Your Majesty, do you still remember the note I wrote for you back then? The plan has changed. The situation is urgent. The Queen was slightly taken aback. Step forward and speak. I removed my long sword and was brought to the Queen's side. She dismissed everyone around her, not even sparing the little princess. I quickly explained my speculation to her. Zheng Yi has defected to the enemy and planted spies in the palace. The theft of my clothes and the change of the musical piece today were all their doing. But the Empress did not believe it. How could there be spies in such a heavily guarded palace? Do not try to make excuses. No matter how much I explained, the Empress refused to listen and even ordered her attendants to drag me out and have me beaten with the board. I was dragged out, covered in blood and flesh, while the little princess cried her eyes out like a fountain of tears. By the time I returned home, the imperial decree had already arrived. Father was dismissed from his post. He respectfully held the decree, but as soon as the eunuch left, he collapsed to the ground and could not get up. Everyone in the capital is talking about me. They say I am an ill-omened daughter, who brings misfortune to my sister and my parents. Everyone avoids our family. No one ever comes to visit. I struggled to get up from the bed. I rubbed my butt. Thanks to the golden wound medicine sent by the little princess, I was completely healed. I changed into the eunuch's clothes, got into the carriage, and slipped into the palace through a dog hole. When it got dark an hour later, a fire suddenly broke out in the cold palace. The startled maids and elderly women hurriedly rushed to put out the fire, leaving the Empress's palace empty. Dozens of flaming arrows suddenly shot through the air, yet the Empress continued to apply her makeup. By the light of the flames, a dark figure flashed by and appeared behind her, gazing at the face in the bronze mirror that resembled mine. The Empress was momentarily stunned. Chu Yuna, seeming to realize something was amiss, she called out again, Chu Wana. To my surprise, Chu Wana actually spoke. It's me, Your Majesty the Empress. Did you never expect that one day you would die by my hand? This is terrible. She still managed to find the antidote. Chu Wana slid the knife across the Empress's face, her eyes filled with venom. I could have been the one standing by. The Empress sighed. Just like you, but you ruined it all. You locked me away in the cold palace, then pushed me into the lotus pond. I died so miserably. Now, you shall taste the same bitterness." The empress turned pale with fright. "I did not." Chu-Wana feigned surprise. "Oh, that was in a past life. But you still have to die." Before the words had even faded, she plunged the dagger fiercely into the empress. Blood quickly stained her clothes. The little princess tightened her grip on the whip. And I quickly pulled her back, signaling with my eyes that it wasn't the right time yet. In fact, in my previous life, I only found out by chance that Zheng Yi had long harbored thoughts of rebellion. I wanted to send a message to the palace, but I was closely watched by Zheng Yi all day long, so I decided to go to the cold palace and rely on my sister, Chu-Wana, to pass on the message. Unfortunately, she set a trap and threw me into the beast cage. In this life, I have decided to take the initiative. I wrote everything clearly on the note to the empress. Concerned for the stability of the nation, the empress sent people to investigate and only then discovered that everything I said was true. However, the drama in the palace was a prearranged ruse we had agreed upon. Just wait for the enemy to let their guard down, and we'll catch them in a trap soon. Zheng Yi staged a coup. In less than an hour, Zheng Yi's men were standing in the main hall. "Congratulations, General, the traitors have all been executed." Zheng Yi sat upright on the throne, with Chu-Wana standing beside him. She let out a cold snort. "You have all spoken incorrectly. From now on, you should address him as His Majesty the Emperor." Since Zheng Yi had become the emperor, she naturally was the empress. She is now second only to one person, above 10,000 others, even more glorious than my previous life. It's just a pity that this glory is like a bubble, about to be mercilessly popped. The princess and I sent a message to the crown prince, and soon he had the palace surrounded. The appearance of the emperor and empress threw Zheng Yi's subordinates into a panic. The situation quickly shifted. Gnashing his teeth and seeing no hope of escape, Zheng Yi drew his long sword and viciously thrust it toward Chu-Wana. "You worthless scoundrel, didn't you say the empress and crown prince were both dead?" She shook her head desperately, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "I really killed the empress with my own hands. As for the crown prince, my good friend, the chancellor's daughter, has already poisoned him." It turned out that the condition for Zheng Yi to help her obtain the antidote was for her to kill the empress and the crown prince. The little princess sneered. "Brother crown prince has long seen through that wretch's schemes. You think you can usurp the throne? What a delusion." But Zheng Yi didn't believe it. Blinded by rage, he threw Chu-Wana out like a rag to use as a human shield. I, on the other hand, racked my brains to find a way to escape. Recalling the events of my past life, I could no longer suppress the hatred in my heart. I raised my hand and shot a hidden arrow from my sleeve, piercing his neck as Zheng Yi fell to the ground, his eyes filled with blood, staring at me with a deathly glare. But my throat was pierced by the arrow. Unable to make any sound, I looked at him coldly, as if seeing the version of myself from the previous life who had been toyed with by him. He said I was a worthless wretch who couldn't even cry out. I had been pregnant 3 times. But each time he tied me to a horse and caused me to miscarry. Thinking this, I raised my hand and swiftly severed the tendons in his hands and feet. By now, the crown prince had already suppressed the rebels, capture a few barbarians, drug them with aphrodisiacs, and then throw him into the cage. I made this request to the crown prince. A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes, but he still granted it. The little princess bound Chu-Wana with a golden whip. "Sister Yuna, what should we do with this wretch?" I lowered my gaze and sneered. "Naturally, we'll hand her over to the empress for judgment." Upon learning that Chu-Wana had intended to kill her, the empress turned pale with rage, her eyebrows shooting up in fury. "Throw this wretch into the beast garden." Only then did Chu-Wana truly panic. She knelt on the ground, begging for mercy with tears streaming down her face. "Your Majesty, spare my life. I have been wrongfully accused. The one who truly wanted to harm you is my sister, Chu-Yuna. Your Majesty, aren't you curious? The reason I can suddenly speak is all because Chu-Yuna gave me the antidote. We both share the surname Chu. We are sisters born of the same mother. Because she failed to become the crown princess, she grew jealous of you and conspired with me to rebel. When our plan was exposed, she turned against me at the last moment. Even now, she still tries to shift the blame onto me. All eyes were on me, and even the little princess seemed to take half a step back. I sneered inwardly. I took a secret letter from my bosom and handed it to the eunuch. It clearly depicted the barbarian imperial palace and their strategic deployments. All of these were drawn from the memories of my past life. The crown prince felt as if he had found a priceless treasure, and the empress's expression softened considerably. I walked over to Chuwana, watching her tremble like a leaf, and used her blood-stained dagger to lift her chin. Chuwana, even if you are reborn in another life, your fate will only be worse. Because I had rendered great service in protecting the emperor, I was granted the title of princess. Father's illness has recovered, and he has even been promoted for a time. The number of people coming to propose marriage nearly wore out the doorstep. News came from the palace that Zheng Yi had confessed everything, exactly as I had said, and for some reason, Chuwana managed to keep her life. The little princess was indignant. Who would have thought she sang everlasting longing all the way? Father couldn't bear to have her killed, so he banished her to the cold palace. I lowered my gaze and took a sip of tea. Saying nothing, the little princess tentatively asked me, "Why were you all poisoned and made mute back then? And where did Chuwana get the antidote from?" I smiled faintly. Back then, Chuwana and I went to the flower market to see the lanterns. On the way, we encountered a noble lady from the capital who had been kidnapped. After returning, I drank a bowl of water and lost my voice. The little princess looked innocent. "Then did you see the noble lady's face clearly?" I stared blankly at her handsome face and shook my head. "I did not." The little princess seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and pushed the pastries closer to me. "Hurry and eat. I had this specially made for you. Even father hasn't had the pleasure of tasting it." I sighed inwardly under the little princess's watchful gaze. I picked up a plum blossom cake and ate it. She left, thoroughly satisfied. The next day, I suddenly lost my voice and refused to see anyone after that. The little princess never came to see me again, only sending a eunuch with a letter. "I'm sorry, Sister Yoon, you know too much. I hope you don't hate me." I didn't hate her that day. It was her who was taken away, and the one who poisoned us was the empress. For the sake of the royal family's reputation, they chose to sacrifice both me and Chuwana as a subject. I could only accept my fate, because if I didn't take it, then the hundreds of people in my Chu family would likely not escape disaster later. Chuwana gained the empress' favor with a voice similar to that of the late empress. Later still, Chuwana was granted the title of noble consort. When she returned home for a visit, she deliberately kept me in the study. "I owe it all to you, sister. If it weren't for you, I would never have met Zheng Yi. Nor would I have learned his secret, let alone had him help me obtain the antidote one day." She moved with a light step, her slender fingers gently wrapping around my neck. I leaned forward slightly, raising the teacup above my head, but she was very alert. "You drink first." I did as she said, seeing that I was fine. Chuwana was quite satisfied. She took it and drank a couple of sips. Just as she was about to laugh triumphantly, she let out a painful roar instead. What did you give me to drink?" "I can't make a sound. Of course it's poison." I took out an antidote and swallowed it in front of her. "Thanks to you, sister. I was reborn a few hours earlier than you, so I didn't drink that bowl of water, nor did I take that antidote. I kept it all along. The tea my sister just drank was brewed with that water, and what I just took was the antidote. When will this cycle of revenge ever end? How about, this time, you die a little earlier?" Her brows instantly furrowed tightly, her face turning ferocious, her gaze as if poisoned. Yet I felt not the slightest fear, because she could no longer speak. After the imperial consort returned to the palace, she could no longer sing everlasting longing. The emperor, accusing her of deceiving the sovereign, confined her to the cold palace. The next day, the imperial consort's body was found floating in the lotus pond. At the same time, the second daughter of the prime minister's household died suddenly for unknown reasons. The emperor, pitying my father for losing two daughters at once, arranged for me to be buried with the rights of a princess. They did not know. I shed my mortal shell, changed my name, and went to the south of the Yangtze River. I recorded the poems I heard during my travels in a book, set them to music, and composed songs that would be sung for generations. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.